Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Monday Mentor with Jen. I'm Jen Whitmer, and I help teams and leaders solve conflict, cultivate great communication, and really develop empowered teams. And every week I bring somebody on to talk about their area of expertise that will help you in your leadership. And today I have a personal friend who is just a dear, wise, brilliant human being. And I am so excited about Diana being on the show and you getting to meet her. She is a systems architect and expert. She is a people mover in literal and figurative ways. And she is going to bring so much wisdom for your leadership and why systems are so important to our success. So let's welcome Diana.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
I am thrilled. I am thrilled that I get to introduce you to my people since I can't take you by the arm and just introduce you to all the people. So I'm thrilled. So I always love to start with everybody to talk a little bit about how did you get here? What's your story of becoming this type of thought leader, this type of expert in this arena? So tell us the things, Diana.
It all started, honestly, I have a community of people here where I live in Washington, D.C., and I was just watching dreamers go after their dreams. But then a year later, they would quit. And after a couple years of it, it's actually emotionally exhausting. I am that supportive friend. You launch something, I'm going to buy it. You do something, I'm going to be there. But then it's also I'm so emotionally invested in it. And I realized that I was more invested in it than they were. And I just also started to look into statistics of just how many small businesses were failing. And the numbers are high. In 2019, 90% of small businesses failed. And I just thought enough is enough. And so I believe that systems are the reason and the keystone to your success. And so I started a business to just say hey, I'm available for consulting. More and more people started asking for it. And then consulting moved into actually setting it up. And then now we're educating and speaking, and it's just been super fun. So.
Oh, I love your journey because there's so many interesting things that we'll never get to all of it. Both of us as music majors who have turned this interesting way of knowing life through music into different careers. But one of the things you said, I think that's so scary is that how high it is that small businesses fail. And even though most of my audience is working in the corporate space, there's this big move in the corporate space to become more entrepreneurial. And it's the same emotions. It's still really scary. And so systems are those things that you've discovered that really help people stay on track and be able to scale and be successful in what their mission and work is to do. So before we launch into our whole discussion, morning, Ryan and Leslie, and anybody else who's watching, I always say, if you're here live, let us know. And if you're catching the replay, tell us in the comments you're catching the replay. Diana is great at answering questions, so feel free to drop them in as we go through. But I always want to define our terms. So what do you think of as a system? I think that sometimes we get caught up in systems being the inside of my computer, but they're so much broader and bigger than that. So tell us a little bit about how you define that for people.
I think of a system as anything that interconnects to best serve you. So it doesn't have to be something inside your computer. It could be as simple as, I think of I'm blanking on the term, so forgive me, but when a assembly line, that's a system. Sorry, it came to me. So an assembly line, that's a system, right? For what are the things that interconnect and needs to come one step after another in order for all the pieces to sort of smoothly and seamlessly function. That's what I think of it as.
That's really important. And to think about it in that big picture way. I mean, I have a system in the morning for making my French press coffee about where things are. Very important. But also I was talking with a friend this week and they are lacking right now a project manager in their particular project that they're working on. And it's showing up because they didn't have a good system to make sure that the edited proof got to the printer. And it's just been this crazy rigmarole. And I was thinking about all of that extra time and money in this corporate setting that's been wasted because they didn't have a great system to interconnect the pieces.
That is so true. Harvard Business, I believe, maybe don't quote me on that since now it's on the internet that I've said it.
Ish.
Their statistic is that 79% of your time is gained back when a CEO has a system. 70,
Wait a second. You just have to say that again.
79% of your time is gained back when a CEO uses a system. And if you think about it, okay, if you go to any CEO, they're going to tell you that who really runs the show is their admin, right?
True.
If you go to their admin and you're like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. You save our lives time and time again. Do you know what that admin's going to show you? Their system. They're going to tell you where everything is laid out, how it works, what comes first, what comes next, right? Like admins know systems, right? And even like if you think about our experiences as consumers, we love Amazon. Why? Because Amazon has a system like no other. We know exactly what to expect when we go on the website. We know exactly how to get the reviews. I know exactly how to get my refunds. I know exactly where my packages are and how many stops away it is, like from reaching my house. There's a system on the back end of there, and they built a system so that they don't need, like, think of how many hours they've saved trying to like answer phone calls of someone saying, where's my package? How do I do X? How do I do Y? Right? And as any business owner, any CEO, you're always trying to get ahead of those questions from coming at your inbox. And so being one step ahead is really going to set you up for success, because we live in a different time now. You know, when I'm old. And so when I was
so not old.
When I was growing up, we were told, you know, you can respond within 24 hours. That's not the case anymore. People are expecting a response within 10 minutes. That's the response time now. And how are you going to do that if you're not sure of what your system is?
Yeah.
So it's a broad term, but it's so important and so vital.
Well, I just think about, you know, one of the time that you gain back. And even if, you know, so say, you know, you're working at your desk, either, you know, you're in your remote office or you're physically in a cubicle somewhere and your team's doing something and everybody on the team needs to access that thing. Well, what's your system for that? How does everybody? So Google Docs has been a solution, but then there's all kinds of other components to that. I think the piece that you said that's so important is that you're not making the decision of what's the first step, what's the second step, what's the third step. Those are extra decision points that take more time. When you pre-make those decisions, it becomes seamless, and emotionally, it reduces stress and it reduces a lot of friction among people, because people aren't getting frustrated with one another because it's clear, this is where I go for this and this is where I go for that.
Yes, that's exactly it. Those pre-decisions are so, so, so important.
Yeah. I mean, it keeps our emotions kind of like, oh, okay, I can now just deal with the things that are happening.
Yes.
So when you're setting up somebody's systems, when you're like, people come to you and they're like, I'm a mess, I don't know how to put things together, because that would be how I come to things. How do you help people start to wrap their minds around? Because I think one of the scary things about building a system is I don't know where to start. So how do you help people start in creating a system?
One, keep in mind that you're probably doing better than you think you are. So that's one. Two, don't avoid it. Don't put it off. This is probably the most important thing that you could do for your business and for its long-term success, truly. And I mean that with every fiber of my being. And I believe that it's not, the things that we tend to focus on are symptomatic, like, oh, we're not getting enough clients, or we're not getting enough something. It's like, so we focus on social media, or we focus on, you know, like these, what I describe as symptomatic things. But actually what it comes down to is your system, right? Because you've really got to make those pre-decisions so that you set it up where your clients aren't emailing you all the time, or your people aren't emailing you all the time going like, what's next? What do I do now? Like, I'm expecting, you know. And so as a small business owner, truly, like, one of the biggest things is we spend all this time and energy trying to make the sale. We do everything we can to convince them that we are your person. And then as soon as they have made this huge decision from the consumer's perspective, right? They are like, okay, I am ready. Here is my left kidney. And typically, this is where we fail because we're like, cool, see you in 6 months when your project actually starts. But thanks for your left kidney. And for them, they're like emotionally invested now, right? So, like, usually an immediate response is what they're looking for. But now your inbox is flooded. What do I do now? Super ready. Just tell me how do I get to you? Just what's next? And you're just like, was this a mistake? Did I make a mistake here? So things like that. Like, getting ahead of the question asking is going to be really helpful, but also a lot of us tend to quit before the miracle happens. And so not giving up. On a practical level, I recommend to start on pen and paper. What sets you apart from others in your industry? Like, think of your business that way. What sets you apart? What is the experience you want to give your clients? Write it down. What's an ideal journey they should be on from beginning to end? So as soon as they reach out to you, what is the emotion you want them to feel? What's the instantaneous response and next action step you need them to take? Again, after they pay you, what happens there? And so just kind of like really mapping it out and not being vague, right? Because no one's seeing this except you and your team.
Yeah.
Don't be vague about it and don't shy away from it. Just saying like, oh, we're going to send an email here. What kind of an email? What do you need them to do? Yes. Oh, that's also true. Make sure you have a
Why are we
sending the emails? Why are you sending an email? And kind of like mapping that out is going to be part of your system.
Yeah. Well, I love the starting on pen and paper. And I'm going to kind of tie Ryan's comment about supporting and recognizing the gatekeepers, the admins who really do a lot of that functioning work, and bring that into the idea of corporate. And you're working with a team. You're like, I get my assignments. Like my, VP tells me as director where we're going. Well, but they don't, if they're a good leader, don't micromanage you in that. And so you get to decide. And I would suggest also pen to paper. What is the purpose of our team? What are we trying to accomplish? What are the tasks that we're responsible for, and who's responsible for what? And the same idea, when this happens, where are we going? And if that works, if you're on a cross-functional team as well, what do I want support from marketing? What kind of support do I want from traffic and project management, or whatever research? What do you want from that? And then you can go and ask, or you can set up a system. But before you do that pen to paper work that you're talking about, it's still too vague. It's all up in your head. And that's when I get stressed personally. I'm like, it's all up here and I don't know what to do. And it's just all of these pieces. But as soon as I start putting it on paper, it can be like, oh, okay. So now I can, because I'm a Post-it note person, move the Post-its around in the order that makes sense. And I know what I didn't know before and can figure out what I do know and where I need to ask for help.
Yes, exactly. And in the topic of protecting your admins, a lot of this too is clarity is kindness, and having those pre-decisions made together as a team. Admins are truly superheroes. Let me tell you, they are
my
gifts.
admin who is reviewing this right now. You are my superhero, Kate.
They're superheroes, but also like a lot of times they're trying to protect the CEO and trying to protect the team lead. And so sometimes if it needs to come down to it, you're going to get a couple of moments in there where they'll make it up, right? Just to like kind of answer and get it off the list and move this project along. But sometimes you're also going to feel like as the leader, you're like, that's not it. That's not. And then I find that as a leader, because I have my own team, I'm frustrated by their like self-sufficient, like attitudes, but also is like, that's not how I want that to be responded to. That's not how my clients should feel. I hate the way you worded that. And like, now I'm annoyed at her like ability, right? That's not it at all. We make these pre-decisions, and the more clear I can be as a leader, the more clear she is going to be about how to move the needle forward in a way that reflects my brand. Exactly. So that's also part of the pen and paper work too.
I think that's really important to note. And Patrick Lencioni is an organizational psychologist, and one of his books called The Advantage, he talks about how you're clarifying something. Like you have this goal at first, there's 4 steps. And then the other 3 steps are clarify, re-clarify, and clarify some more, essentially. I'm paraphrasing. But really that clarity piece, because sometimes you think it's clear and your admin goes off, or your team member goes off to do, because they're all excited, they've been given their marching orders, and you gave them steps 1, 2, and 8. And not that, because you're like, oh, I thought that was clear. Or I thought I gave that at the end. And that clarity piece is so, so important. And one of my other favorite Brene Brown phrases is painting done. And that conversation, once you know what you want on pen and paper, last week I was talking about creating shared meaning with your team, getting to painting done so both parties are understanding, and then it's in a system where you're not making that decision again. And I hate it when we make the decision, like, we already made this decision, why are we talking about this again? That type of work in your system is so powerful as a leader. And then everybody is on your team, they want to stay on your team because they're like, I feel supported. I know what I'm expected to do. I see the connection between my work and the end goal. All of that is what the research shows that retains employees and keeps employee engagement and employee well-being really high.
Right. Exactly. Everything you just said. So just gonna let your brilliance shine there. There's nothing I need to add here.
Well, I would love to hear as we're like almost time to wrap up, because again, I can't believe what time it is. What are some of the things, once people start that pen to paper work and they really, they might be in a solopreneur where they get to make some decisions about the systems, but it's like, oh my gosh, which one should I use? And then they get paralyzed in that space. Or they're in the corporate space where it's like, I have to fit this system. So why do I even try? Why can't I just keep doing it? Like, what would you say to those people who are struggling after that space? I can't make it what it was on my pen and paper.
I think it's important to know that there's no perfect system. So take the pressure off of yourself.
Yeah.
And either if you're in a corporate or a small business owner, your system will change roughly every 6 months. So I think that's part of the pain point too, is you've just put in all of this effort and energy. But we want the system to change because you should be growing as a business. You should be, your team is forever going to look different. You're launching new products, you come up with new ideas, and you want a system that's going to support the bigger, newer version of you, right? It's like, and so it shouldn't be a full like overhaul every time, but there's tweaks. It needs to be revisited just every 6 months or so, of saying like, we probably shouldn't be sending this email, or, team member A probably doesn't need to be doing that task anymore because we got an upgrade. And so as you upgrade, you will find ways to also trim those minutes and seconds off your day, just to kind of help. And so the painful work is in the beginning. And the idea there is to not give up. Don't quit before the miracle happens. But the every 6 months or so, you just want to tweak it, make sure that the engine's still well oiled, and double check all those things. It's like a tune-up.
Yeah. I think that's so helpful, because when you say, at first when you're like every 6 months, I'm like, I had that exact feeling of like, I just did all that work. But the idea of like checking on it and like just making sure it's still moving ahead forward, your team member may have changed, your tasks or the goal of your team, a restructuring happens, things like that. The idea of revisiting and staying clear is super helpful. Like, just to know that that's expected, because I know I have run into resistance when I've worked with some leaders that they're like, but we just did this, because emotionally that's what it feels like. But to know, like, but this is the time to revisit. Your project may be an 18-month project. Like, that's the timeline, but it's a really good idea to just like, okay, let's just check. Are we still on the right path? Is the system working for us? What has changed because even if you're working in an 18-month project, whatever you did on month 1 is not probably what's happening on month 15. And so that's a really helpful just time marker, I think, for us in all kinds of ways. And then there's no perfect system.
There's no perfect system. Don't wait for it. I get a lot of people who are like, I'm going to do it after I do X. And honestly, like, you're going to be you're always going to find a reason to delay something, and I don't think it's boring, but I know that it's been used as the B word.
I don't know. Boring. Maybe I might find it boring sometimes.
Goodness gracious. But, it is one of those really important things not to put off, like, because we tend to also, it's an accountability piece for yourself as well. And so we tend to view it along the same emotional points as like doing your taxes, because there's accountability involved in it. You're now seeing all the finances that you had to like You just
Yeah.
willy-nilly charged on your credit card the
Yeah.
last couple of like for the last 12 months. And so a lot of that is this too, of just like confronting the reality of like what you think is actually happening versus what's really happening. And that
Mhm.
can be really, really hard. But
Yeah.
again, like, please don't give up. Please don't push it off, because like the success of your team and your business is on the line. And so don't put it off. Don't put it off. That's all I have to say about that.
Oh, that's so good. I didn't even think about the accountability piece of that. And
Mhm.
one of the things that we get freaked out about sometimes is accountability, that emotional component. But every leadership study, the more and more I dig into helping leaders, accountable leaders are the ones who succeed.
Right.
And so that type of systems helping you keep accountable. I just think about my assistant Kate and I have worked out a system for how my emails go out in my blog. And I'm so much freer now that I'm like ahead and I don't feel like I'm scrambling. And that was just a system. And it
Mhm.
was super helpful to me and keeping those things together and helping me help the people that I'm trying to serve. And so I just take what you're saying and like, yeah, that accountability piece is where we find so much success. And it helps us grow,
Yeah.
both monetarily, but also just as a person and be more free.
Mhm.
So, oh, I want to talk forever. um,
Same.
tell the people where to find you, how they can keep up with you, what you have to offer them. There's a little bit about Diana here, but tell us where we can find you and keep up with you.
Oh, you can find me on Instagram. It's the finer points on Instagram. You can also scan
It's here.
the QR code, whichever. Yep, that one. Scan that baby. You can just reach out to me. I'll do my best to check LinkedIn. I'm so sorry, I'm not on that as often. Instagram is your best bet. Instagram's your best bet. But, but I'm trying.
It's
We all
okay.
have flaws. We all have flaws. So there you are.
Awesome. And Diana is not going to say this, but I'm going to say this. There is a giant systems group called Honeybook that she is an expert and pro at. She doesn't just do that, but they rely on her expertise a lot for the ability to create things that make it easier for small businesses. And she also is a whiz at helping people look at a project and in their calendar outside of that kind of system. So please touch base with Diana because you've heard her wisdom just about the big picture. But man, when she gets into the details, you're just amazed. So please connect with Diana here or either on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Ryan and Leslie and Shelby, for being here today. If you're catching the replay, please ask your questions. We will come back and answer. I will be here next week with, I'm just confirming that I know what I'm talking about. Next week should be David Paul. And yes, next week will be David Paul. So we will be here together. And until then, I hope that you really work at making your work whole, that you enjoy your people, and you can flourish with what you're doing. So thanks, Diana, so much for being here.
Thank you
And
guys so much. Thank you.
bye, everybody.